Hey, what's up? Sonic's here. Welcome to episode 2 of the 5 Minutes to a Better Song tutorial series. So I've been getting questions lately in reference to how I get my tracks so freaking loud. Well, there's actually a lot that goes into it, but I'm going to show you one technique I use that you can use to see if your tracks are actually loud enough compared to your influences. Now, ultimately, how loud you want your track to be comes down to actually your preference, but I'm going to show you this simple method to see if you're up to par with your influences. So I want you to know that there are two types of loudnesses. There's peak loudness and apparent loudness. Peak is the actual peak volume of the waveform, and apparent loudness is how loud we as humans perceive it to be. I pulled this chart from a NYU article I was reading that does a good job at explaining how we as humans perceive different frequencies in terms of loudness. As you can see on the low end of the spectrum, x-axis being the frequency spectrum, lower frequencies need to be louder in order for us to hear them, but as you get down to about 1,000 hertz to roughly 5,000 hertz, those frequencies don't need to be as loud. And looking at this bubble right here, that's about where conversational speeches lie. Now, a little fun fact, where this valley is about where a baby's cry can hear. So there's a couple theories drawn up on why our hearing is set up this way. But that's for a different conversation. So let's move on to the fun stuff. Now, what I'm actually going to show you today is how to measure that loudness in your sessions and in your masters. One way you can do that is by measuring the RMS value of your waveform. And RMS value means root mean squared. And for those of you who don't know, that is the average between all the peaks in your waveform. Now, there's many different things you can use to measure root mean squared. In this instance, I like to use Isotope's ozone to measure it, and the RMS meter's right here. But bear in mind that measuring RMS is not a completely accurate way to measure loudness. It's a good reference point, but ultimately you need to use your ears in order to determine what the loudness actually sounds like. Now, what you're going to want to do when you're mastering your track and trying to get it loud is you're going to want to bring in a couple reference tracks. And these tracks should be of similar style, genre, similar sound to what you're going for, and also have the loudness, the quality of the loudness you're trying to go for as well. In this instance, I have my mix of Carol the Bells, and I have Culture Code's remix of Colors, and I also have We Are Not Alone VIP by Virtual Riot. Now, I did forget to mention that whatever meter you use to measure RMS with, you want to make sure you're using that meter all the time whenever you're doing this reference, because every plugin and every meter measures RMS differently. So if you're using different meters, you're going to get different readings, and you're not gonna get the same loudness. Also, make sure that you put a limiter on whatever tracks you import or MP3s you import, because when you encode down from WAV to MP3s, it actually changes the waveform and causes them to clip a little bit. So this will help you get a little bit more accurate readings when you're actually comparing these tracks. So let's play this reference track here and take a look at the kind of RMS readings we get. So you see it was kind of sitting around -3, -2.5 during the loudest parts. Now, in my opinion, my experience, this track is extremely loud, and that RMS is pretty high, which kind of makes this song a good example and a bad example at the same time. But for loudness' sake, it's a good example. Now, let's move over to my track, Carol the Bells, and take a look at the RMS for this guy during the drop. So you see, my RMS wasn't as high as the reference track, but in my opinion, I think my track sounds almost as loud, if not just as loud, as this track. It might even be a little louder. Um, but it just goes to show that RMS is not a completely foolproof way of actually measuring loudness. Well, that's all I have for you today. I hope it was helpful. Definitely tune in next week for the next episode of the 5 Minutes to a Better Song tutorial series. Um, but check out this track. It's available for free on my SoundCloud. There'll be a link in the description below. And if you want to read that article on loudness that I found with NYU, that'll be in the description below as well. But until next week, peace out.